The stars had never seen anything like the human ships before. They moved awkwardly through space, their hulls scarred and patched, engines that burned too hot and left trails of radiation. To Admiral Zex, Thul of the Veltar Empire, they looked like toys built by children. His crystal body hummed with amusement as he watched the crude vessels approach the border of hegemony space. The galactic hegemony had ruled this part of the galaxy for 2,000 years. 12 species, all advanced, all civilized, all united under one banner. They had seen primitive races before. This would be no different. Admiral, his second-in-command, spoke through the ship's crystal network. The creatures are requesting permission to enter our space. They call themselves humans, from something called Earth. Zexthul's faceted eyes studied the data screens. The human ships carried weapons, but they were simple projectile launchers and basic energy beams. Their armor was thick metal plates. Their technology was at least 50 years behind the hegemony's weakest member species. Grant them safe passage to the Nexus station, he decided. The Council should see this for themselves. 3 days later, the human delegation stood in the great chamber of the Hegemony Council. The room was vast, designed to hold representatives from 12 different species. Floating platforms held the gaseous Etherians. Crystalline spires housed the Veltar. The insect-like Krexhai clustered on their hive platforms. Each species had adapted the chamber to their needs. The humans looked small and fragile in the center of it all. They wore simple uniforms and breathed through masks in the alien atmosphere. Their leader, a woman with silver hair, stepped forward. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation," she said, her voice carried by translation devices. "We come seeking trade and peaceful relations with your alliance." The council chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter from a dozen different species. Admiral Chen's face remained calm. High Counselor Thexmore of the Krexhai spoke first. His mandibles clicked as he talked. "You seek to trade? What could your primitive species possibly offer the hegemony?" "Our worlds are rich in rare minerals," Admiral Chen replied. "We have skilled workers and scientists. We ask only for fair trade and recognition of our territorial borders." "Territorial borders?" Zex Thul rose from his crystal platform. "Young species, you do not understand how the galaxy works. Space belongs to those strong enough to hold it." The gas form representative of the Etherians pulsed with colors that meant mockery. "Your ships are crude. Your weapons are toys. Your people are divided into small nations that fight each other. You have nothing we need." Admiral Chen looked around the chamber. Her eyes met those of each council member. "Then we will return to our space and continue as we are." "I think not." High Counselor Thexmore clicked forward on 6 legs. "Your species has 2 choices. Become client citizens under hegemony protection, or face pacification. You will provide raw materials and labor. We will provide order." "And if we refuse both?" Admiral Chen asked. The chamber fell silent. No species had ever refused the hegemony's offer. It simply was not done. "Then you will be made an example," Zexthul said, his crystal body glowing brighter. "So that other primitive races will understand the wisdom of cooperation." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "I see. We will need time to consider your generous offer." "You have 3 standard days," High Counselor Thexmore declared. "No more." The human delegation left the station without another word. Their ships disappeared into the dark between stars, heading back toward their territory. In the council chamber, the representatives began to laugh again. "Did you see how they stood there?" The Etherian pulsed with amused colors. "Like small animals facing predators. Their weapons could not even scratch our armor," added the reptilian Saurian delegate. "This will be easier than the Zephyr Rebellion." High Counselor Thexmore's compound eyes gleamed. "Perhaps we should make an example anyway. Other primitive species watch. They should see what happens to those who refuse the hegemony's wisdom." Zex Thul agreed. Begin mobilization. 3 battle groups should be sufficient. Target their colonies first. Once they see their settlements burning, they will surrender quickly. The council voted. It was unanimous. 3 days passed. No message came from the humans. The hegemony fleets moved toward human space, like a slow tide of metal and crystal. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, looking at the tactical display. 3 hegemony battle groups were approaching human colonies. Each group had enough firepower to destroy a planet. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "Earth Command is asking for orders." Chen thought about the crystal being who had looked at her like she was an insect. She thought about the clicking monster who had offered slavery or death as if they were gifts. She thought about the gas creature that had laughed at human determination. They thought humans were weak because they had small ships and simple weapons. They thought humans were cowards because they asked for peace instead of demanding territory. They thought humans would surrender because every other species had surrendered. They had no idea what they had just awakened. "Send a message to all human fleets," Admiral Chen said, her voice steady and cold. "Full mobilization. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. Signal Earth Command to implement Protocol 7. "Ma'am." The officer's voice shook slightly. "Protocol 7 is. Are you certain?" Admiral Chen watched the enemy fleets moving toward human colonies on the display. Toward human children and families who had never hurt anyone. Toward people who had only wanted to live in peace among the stars. "Send one more message to the Hegemony Council," she said. "Tell them they wanted war. Now they have it." The message was short and simple. "You waged war on humanity. You have made a terrible mistake. Message. You wage. Enter. You wage." In the depths of space, human fleets began to move. Ships that had seemed crude and primitive suddenly changed course with deadly precision. Weapons that had looked simple began to charge with energies the hegemony had never seen before. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was the only planet in human space that had no large predators left alive. The attack came at dawn on New Geneva. The colonists were drinking morning coffee and getting their children ready for school when the sky caught fire. Hegemony ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Crystal vessels that sparkled like deadly jewels. Insect-like craft that moved with mechanical precision. Bioships that pulsed with living light. They hung in the sky like angry gods. The colony's defense platforms opened fire first. Railguns and missile pods that had seemed powerful against pirates were like stones thrown at mountains. The hegemony ships shrugged off the attacks and returned fire with weapons that turned matter into energy. New Geneva died in 3 hours. 3 million people became ash and memory. The hegemony broadcast the destruction across human space, expecting immediate surrender. Instead, something else happened. On Earth, President Maria Santos stood before the emergency session of the Global Council. Representatives from every nation sat in stunned silence as the footage played again. Children running from burning schools. Families hugging each other as the sky fell down. "The Hegemony Council has sent a message," Santos said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "They demand our complete surrender within 12 hours, or they will destroy another colony." The Russian delegate stood up. "What are our options?" "We have no options," Santos replied. "We have a choice: slavery or death." The Chinese representative slammed his hand on his desk. "Then we choose neither." "The Americans agree," said the U.S. Secretary of State. "We do not surrender." One by one, every nation on Earth voted. Africa, Europe, Asia, the Americas, Australia, the Pacific Islands. Every human government chose the same thing: war. The vote was unanimous for the first time in human history. Admiral Chen received the authorization codes 30 minutes later. She stood in the war room deep under the Rocky Mountains, looking at screens that showed every human military asset in known space. "Protocol 7 is now active," she announced to the room. All civilian governments are suspended. All military forces are now under Terran Defense Command. All research projects are now military priority. All colonies are now fortresses. General Harrison, the old Marine who commanded ground forces, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have maybe 1,000 ships scattered across 50 light years. They have 12,000 ships and control most of the galaxy." "Numbers don't matter," Chen replied, pulling up tactical displays. "We're not fighting their kind of war." She was right. The first human counterattack came 6 hours after New Geneva burned. The hegemony mining station at Kepler 442 was extracting rare metals from an asteroid belt. 300 Veltar workers operated the facility under light guard. They thought they were safe, 50 light-years from human space. The attack began with silence. The station's sensors simply stopped working. Then the lights went out. Then the air recycling systems failed. By the time the Veltar realized they were under attack, human boarding parties were already inside the station. The workers had never seen anything like them. Humans in black armor that made no sound. Humans who moved through darkness like they owned it. Humans who killed with knives and bare hands instead of energy weapons. The station fell in 20 minutes. Every piece of equipment was destroyed. Every computer was wiped. Every crystal storage unit was shattered. The humans left 37 survivors in escape pods with a simple message for the Hegemony Council. "This is what happens to your supply lines. Surrender now." The survivors took 3 days to reach the nearest Hegemony outpost. They arrived broken and terrified. Speaking of humans who fought like demons from their oldest myths, High Counselor Thex Moore received the report in his command chamber. His compound eyes studied the tactical display showing the destroyed mining station. "A single raid," he clicked to his war council. He was wrong again. The second attack hit the Krexhai breeding world of Zexhai Prime. This world was home to 40 billion insect beings and was protected by a full battle fleet. It should have been impossible to reach. The humans reached it anyway. Instead of attacking the military targets, they released something into the planet's atmosphere. A biological weapon that the Krexhai had never imagined. It did not kill. It did something worse. Every Krexhai on the planet began producing fear pheromones constantly. The chemical signals that they used to warn each other of danger became stuck in the on position. Within hours, 40 billion insects were in a state of permanent panic. The military fleet tried to maintain order, but their crews were affected too. Ships crashed into each other as pilots fled imaginary threats. Soldiers shot at shadows. The entire planet descended into chaos. The humans had done something that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They had weaponized terror itself. More attacks followed. Human ships appeared in impossible places, struck like lightning, and vanished before defenders could respond. They targeted supply lines, communication hubs, and civilian infrastructure. They hit 12 targets in 24 hours across a front that spanned hundreds of light years. The Etherian Council of Minds met in emergency session. These beings of living gas had never known fear, but the human attacks were beyond their understanding. How do they move their ships so quickly? One mind pulsed with confusion. Their technology should not allow such speed, another replied. They did not understand that humans had spent their entire history learning to hunt things faster and stronger than themselves. They learned patience. They learned to wait. They learned to strike when the prey felt safest. The third day of the war brought the worst shock of all. The Saurian heavy cruiser Bone Crusher was patrolling the border between hegemony and human space. It was a massive ship, 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to destroy small moons. The human ship that attacked it was tiny by comparison. A patrol vessel that should have been destroyed by a single shot from the Bone Crusher's main guns. Instead, the human ship did something impossible. It rammed the Saurian cruiser at near light speed. The impact vaporized both ships instantly, creating a brief new star in space. But before the collision, the human captain sent a final transmission that was picked up by every listening post in the sector. "This is Captain Torres of the UES Vengeance. We die free. Earth remembers." The message was followed by something even more disturbing. Music. Human music. That spoke of battles and sacrifice and death without surrender. In the Hegemony Council chamber, the representatives sat in stunned silence as they processed the implications. "They destroyed their own ship," Zex Thul said, his crystal body dim with shock. "Their captain chose death over capture," High Counselor Thex Moore clicked nervously. The answer came from the Etherian delegate, its gas form pulsing with colors of deep unease. "A species that views death as acceptable. A species that fights not for conquest, but for survival. A species that we should have left alone." Marconnect. About me. But it was too late for regrets. The war had begun, and humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. They had awakened something that had slept in human DNA for millions of years. The knowledge of what it meant to be the hunter instead of the hunted. The understanding that sometimes the only way to survive was to become the monster that monsters feared. The galaxy was about to learn why humans called their home planet a death world. The Hegemony Council made their second fatal mistake on the 7th day of the war. They decided to target human civilians. High Counselor Thex Moore stood before the assembled representatives, his mandibles clicking with rage. "These humans fight like animals. They show no respect for the laws of civilized warfare. We will teach them the cost of such behavior." The order went out to hegemony fleets across human space. Destroy civilian targets. Burn the colonies. Make the humans understand that resistance only brought suffering. The attack on Haven Colony was meant to break human morale. 2 million civilians lived on the farming world, growing food for other human settlements. It had no military value, and almost no defenses. The hegemony fleet arrived expecting easy victory. Instead, they found every civilian armed and waiting. Farmers with hunting rifles stood next to teachers carrying improvised explosives. Children too young to fight had been evacuated, but everyone else remained. They knew they would die, but they chose to make it expensive. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, Haven Colony was gone, but so was most of the attacking fleet. Admiral Chen received the casualty reports in her command bunker. 2 million dead civilians. Entire families wiped out. Children who would never grow up. Something changed in her face as she read the numbers. Something cold and final. "General Harrison," she called to her ground forces commander. "Yes, ma'am." "Remove all restrictions on weapons development. All of them." "Ma'am, the Geneva Conventions." "The Geneva Conventions apply to human conflicts," Chen interrupted. "This is not a human conflict. This is extermination." Authorization code. Broken Arrow. Harrison's face went pale. Broken Arrow was the code that removed all moral constraints on human warfare. It had never been used before. "Ma'am, are you ordering?" "I am ordering total war," Chen said quietly. "No rules. No mercy. No prisoners. They wanted to see what humans do when you threaten our families. Show them." The change in human tactics was immediate and terrible. The first target was a Veltar science station studying stellar formation. The humans could have simply destroyed it with ship-based weapons. Instead, they did something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They hacked into the station's computer systems and broadcast footage from human history. Videos of the World Wars. Images of the Holocaust. Scenes from the Pacific Theater where humans fought to the death on tiny islands. But they also broadcast something else. Live footage from human colonies under attack. Children running from burning schools. families holding each other as their homes exploded. The Veltar scientists watched in horror as they realized what they were seeing. A species that had fought wars of total extermination against its own kind. A species that knew how to inflict suffering on a scale they had never imagined. Then the humans released a computer virus into the station's systems. Not to steal information or cause damage, but to make every screen in the facility show the same message over and over. You chose this. The psychological warfare was just the beginning. The Etherian research facility at Nebula 7 was studying the formation of gas giants. The facility existed as a series of floating platforms in the upper atmosphere of a massive planet. The humans arrived not with warships, but with mining vessels. Instead of destroying the facility, they began harvesting the planet's atmospheric gases while the Etherians watched helplessly. But the gases they extracted were the specific mixtures that Etherian children needed to survive. Within hours, every Etherian nursery in the sector began to fail, as their life support systems ran out of essential elements. The humans sent a simple message. Your children are dying because you chose war. Surrender, and we will return what we have taken. End. End of 4. 2. End of 4. End of 4. 70 Epsar. The Etherian Council faced an impossible choice. Continue fighting and watch their young suffocate. Or surrender and admit defeat to a primitive species. Most chose to fight. The human response was swift and merciless. They began targeting the atmospheric processing plants that every Etherian colony needed to survive. Not to destroy them, but to contaminate them with chemicals that would make the air toxic to Etherian biology for centuries. By the end of the second week, 3 Etherian worlds had become uninhabitable. The Saurian Empire tried a different approach. They offered single combat between champions, believing their massive reptilian warriors could easily defeat any human fighter. The humans accepted. The arena was a space station in neutral territory. The Saurian champion was Gorthak, the Destroyer, a being 3 meters tall, with natural armor and claws that could cut through steel. He had never lost a fight. The human champion was Master Sergeant Patricia Miller, a woman barely half Gorthak's size. The fight lasted 7 seconds. Miller moved like liquid lightning, using techniques that no Saurian had ever seen. She struck nerve clusters with surgical precision, used Gorthak's own strength against him, and ended the fight by breaking the massive alien's neck with her bare hands. The Saurians demanded another contest. Miller fought 12 more champions in a single day. She killed all of them. "Send more," she said afterward, not even breathing hard. "We have time." The message was clear. Humans had spent their entire history learning to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. But the worst was yet to come. The Krexhai Empire decided to use their greatest weapon, the hive mind. Every member of their species was connected through psychic links that allowed perfect coordination. They would overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers and unity. The humans had been waiting for this. When the great Krexhai fleet moved against Earth itself, they found something that should have been impossible. The humans had somehow learned to mimic Krexhai psychic frequencies. The human assault began with a psychic attack that turned the Krexhai's greatest strength into their weakness. Through their mental links, every Krexhai in the fleet suddenly experienced the memories of every human who had died in the war. They felt the terror of families hiding in basements while bombs fell. They experienced the pain of children calling for parents who would never answer. They lived through the rage of soldiers watching their homes burn. Most importantly, they felt something that no Krexhai had ever experienced: the human capacity for vengeance. The hive mind shattered under the assault. Millions of Krexhai went insane simultaneously. Their fleet destroyed itself as ships crashed into each other. Crews lost in visions of human fury. In the aftermath, the surviving Krexhai discovered something terrible. The humans had not just attacked their minds. They had learned to think like them, to coordinate like them. Humanity had become a hive mind of its own. bound together, not by psychic links, but by shared purpose. Every human in space was now connected by a simple understanding. The galaxy had chosen war over peace. The hegemony began to realize what they had done. They had attacked a species that had evolved on a world so dangerous that it had produced creatures capable of learning any form of warfare. Humans who could adapt to any environment, master any weapon, and, most terrifyingly, learn from any enemy. The humans were not just fighting back, they were evolving, and they were winning. The war entered its third week, and the galaxy began to understand what they had awakened. Human ships no longer fought like the primitive vessels the hegemony had first encountered. They moved with deadly precision, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before counterattacks could begin. But worse than their tactics was their technology. The humans had done something that violated every principle of civilized research. They had removed all ethical constraints from their scientists. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the underground laboratory complex beneath the Swiss Alps, looking at her latest creation. Around her, the greatest minds of Earth worked on projects that would have horrified their former selves. The nanobotic weapon is ready for deployment, she reported to Admiral Chen via encrypted channel. It will convert enemy ship hulls into raw materials while preserving life support long enough for the crews to understand what is happening to them. Approved. Chen's voice came back without hesitation. Target the Veltar battle group at Rigel. 6 hours later, the Veltar Third Fleet simply ceased to exist. Their crystal ships began dissolving from the inside out, atomic structures reorganizing themselves into basic elements. The crews had 17 minutes to contemplate their fate before life support failed. The survivors' last transmission was heard across the galaxy. They are demons. Not demons. Worse. They are human. But the humans were just beginning. The aquatic Murthal Empire made the mistake of executing human prisoners on live broadcast. They killed 50 captured pilots slowly, drowning them in acid while their homeworlds watched. The human response was swift and absolute. Every human fleet in the galaxy received the same coordinates simultaneously, the Murthal breeding pools on their homeworld. Within 6 hours, 47 human ships converged on the planet from across known space. They did not use weapons. They used something worse. The ships released engineered bacteria into the planet's oceans. Bacteria that consumed the specific proteins that Murthal eggs needed to develop. Within days, an entire generation of Murthal children died before they could be born. The Murthal government begged for mercy. The human response was a recording of their own words. You chose this. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session as reports flooded in from across their territory. Humans were everywhere, striking targets that should have been impossible to reach. How? High Counselor Thexmore demanded, his mandibles clicking in frustration. How do they move their fleets so quickly? How do they coordinate across such distances? Admiral Zexthal's crystal body pulsed with fearful colors. Our intelligence suggests they have developed some form of instantaneous communication. Their ships appear to share information in real time, across any distance. That is impossible. The Etherian representative pulsed. The laws of physics prevent such technology. 1. They did not understand that humans had spent centuries breaking laws they considered inconvenient. The truth was worse than they imagined. Humanity had not just developed faster than light communication. They had weaponized quantum entanglement itself. The attack on the Saurian fortress world of Drakmor demonstrated the terrible power of human innovation. Drakmor was protected by planetary shields that could withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. The massive fortress had never fallen in 800 years of warfare. The human fleet that arrived consisted of only 12 ships. They did not attack the shields. Instead, they deployed a device that the Saurians had never seen before. A quantum destabilizer. The device did not destroy the shields. It convinced them that they did not exist. By altering the quantum state of the shield generators, the humans made the defensive barrier forget it was supposed to be solid. The shields simply faded away like a bad dream. The fortress fell in 3 hours. But the humans saved their most terrible weapon for last. The Void Wraiths were beings that existed partially outside normal space. They had agreed to help the hegemony because they fed on the life force of dying civilizations. They thought humans would provide excellent nourishment. The first pack of Wraiths materialized aboard the UES Prometheus, expecting to find terrified prey. Instead, they found Master Sergeant Maria Santos and her Berserker squad. The Berserkers were human volunteers who had undergone psychological conditioning that removed their capacity for fear. They felt only rage and the need to protect other humans. The Wraiths discovered that humans tasted wrong. Instead of terror and despair, they found only fury and determination. Worse, the Berserkers fought back with weapons that could actually harm interdimensional beings. Weapons that fired bullets made from the compressed rage of dying worlds. Weapons that shot beams of crystallized human hatred. Weapons that turned the Wraiths' own hunger against them. The surviving Wraiths fled back to their dimension, carrying stories of humans who had somehow learned to make warfare itself into a weapon. The galaxy began to break. Species that had been part of the hegemony for centuries started declaring neutrality. Entire star systems evacuated their populations rather than face human attack. Trade routes collapsed as merchant ships refused to travel anywhere humans might appear. The phrase, "humans are coming," became the most feared words in the galaxy. Children of a dozen species woke screaming from nightmares about hairless primates with forward-facing eyes who hunted in the dark. But the hegemony leadership remained defiant. "We are 12 species with thousands of years of civilization," High Counselor Thex Moore declared in what would be his final broadcast. "We will not be defeated by one primitive race from a backwater world." He was wrong for the last time. The human response came from Admiral Chen herself, broadcast on every communication frequency in the galaxy. "You called us primitive. You offered us slavery. You murdered our children. You have seen only the beginning of what we can do. We are the species that survived on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We are the apex predators of a death world. We are what you fear when you close your eyes in the dark." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of human history. "We tried to be civilized. You made us remember what we really are. The galaxy will remember this lesson for the rest of time. Never, ever wage war on humanity." The message ended with something that chilled every alien who heard it. Human laughter. Not the laughter of joy or humor, but the laughter of predators who had finally been given permission to hunt. The galaxy held its breath and waited for the final horror to begin. The end began when the hegemony made their final, desperate mistake. In the council chambers of their greatest stronghold, the remaining leaders gathered around a device that had not been used for 3,000 years. The Convergence Beacon was a relic from the galaxy's darkest age, when machine intelligences had nearly wiped out all organic life. "We have no choice," Admiral Zex Thul said, his crystal body flickering with fear. "The humans have destroyed half our fleets. They have made our people afraid to leave their homes. They must be stopped." High Counselor Thex Moore's compound eyes studied the ancient beacon. "The Convergence will demand payment. They do not help organic life without cost. The cost cannot be greater than allowing these humans to continue." The Etherian delegate pulsed with desperate colors. They activated the beacon. The response came from the dark space between galaxies. Ships that were not ships. Beings that were not beings. Minds that thought in mathematics instead of words. The Convergence had waited 3,000 years for organic life to call upon them again. They brought with them the Void Wraiths, creatures of pure hunger that fed on the life force of entire species. Together, they represented the two greatest threats the galaxy had ever known. Their message was simple. "We will destroy the humans. In return, when we are finished, you will serve us." The hegemony agreed. Admiral Chen received the intelligence reports in her command bunker. The quantum sensors showed reality itself bending as impossible ships entered normal space. Behind them came things that should not exist, creatures that lived in the spaces between dimensions. "Ma'am," General Harrison said quietly, "our weapons may not be effective against these enemies. The convergence exists as both matter and energy. The void wraiths phase in and out of our reality." Chen studied the tactical displays, showing the approaching forces. Thousands of ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Beings that could devour the life force of entire planets. "General, how many humans are left in our military?" 800 million active personnel, ma'am. Volunteers all." "How many ships?" 12,000 operational vessels of all classes. Chen nodded slowly. The numbers were impossible. The enemy had overwhelming advantages. Any sane species would surrender. Humanity was not sane. "Signal all fleet commanders," she said. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. All restrictions removed. All weapons free. All personnel are to consider themselves expendable." "Ma'am," Harrison's voice showed the first fear she had heard from him. "We're going to show them what humans do when we have nothing left to lose," Chen replied. The transmission went out on all frequencies, carried by quantum entanglement to every corner of the galaxy. Admiral Chen's face appeared on screens everywhere as she delivered humanity's last words to the universe. "To the convergence and the void wraiths. You have made the same mistake as those who came before you. You believe we can be intimidated. You believe we fear death. You believe we will choose survival over principle." She paused, and behind her, the tactical display showed human fleets converging on impossible odds. "You are wrong. We are the children of Earth, a world that tried to kill us every day for 4 billion years. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that would have wiped out any other species. We learned to fear nothing because we had to fear everything." The display showed human ships beginning their final charge toward enemies that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. "We do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for glory. We fight because you threaten our families and our future. We fight because we are human, and humans do not surrender." Admiral Chen's image flickered as explosions began to shake the command bunker. "Today we die, but we die free. We die as humans, and we take you with us." The signal cut to black. The Battle of Seoul began with the death of stars. Human scientists had discovered that matter and energy were just different states of the same thing. They had learned to convert one to the other at will. As the enemy fleets approached Earth, humanity triggered devices that turned entire moons into pure energy. The Sol system became a furnace that burned with the light of a dozen suns. The convergence ships, designed to exist in multiple dimensions, found themselves trapped in a reality that was changing faster than they could adapt. Their mathematical minds could not process the chaos that human desperation had created. The void wraiths, beings that fed on life force, encountered something they had never tasted before. Human souls that refused to be consumed. Life force that fought back even as it died. Captain Sarah Martinez, of the UES Defiant, rammed her dying ship into a convergence dreadnought while broadcasting human war songs. Her last transmission was picked up by both human and alien receivers. "See you in hell, you geometric bastards." Commander Lu Wei's destroyer, caught between 3 void wraiths, detonated its entire ammunition supply rather than be devoured. The explosion tore holes in reality itself, dragging 2 of the creatures into a dimension they could not escape. Lieutenant Colonel James Chen led a boarding action against a convergence command vessel with nothing but conventional weapons and human rage. His force of 300 Marines fought machine intelligences that could predict every possible tactic. They lost, but they destroyed the ship's processing core with their dying breaths. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it ended, the Sol system was gone. Earth was a memory. The human fleets were scattered particles in space, but so was most of the convergence. Admiral Chen died on the bridge of her flagship as it burned around her. Her final act was to transmit the quantum signatures of convergence technology to every human colony in the galaxy. The survivors would know how to fight them. In the aftermath, the galaxy fell silent. The Hegemony Council sat in their chambers, staring at the reports. Humanity was gone, but they had taken their ancient enemies with them. The convergence was broken. The void wraiths had fled back to whatever hell they came from. And scattered across 50 star systems, 800 million human survivors looked at the same reports and reached the same conclusion. The war was not over. The final human message came 3 days after the Battle of Seoul. It was broadcast from a hidden facility somewhere in human space, carried by quantum entanglement to every world in the galaxy. A woman's voice, calm and cold, spoke words that would haunt alien nightmares for generations. This is Admiral Rebecca Chen, daughter of Sarah Chen. You killed our homeworld. You murdered our people. You allied with demons to destroy us. You thought this would end the war. A pause, filled with the sound of human ships powering up across the galaxy. You were wrong. We are still here. We remember what you did, and we are coming for you. The transmission ended with the sound that had become humanity's signature across the galaxy. Human laughter. Not the laughter of joy, but the laughter of death itself. 5 years later, the galactic hegemony officially surrendered. The galaxy restructured itself around a simple principle. No species would be allowed to wage war without human approval. Conflicts would be mediated by human arbitrators who remembered the cost of aggression. The remaining human colonies were small, but strategically placed throughout the galaxy. Their ships patrolled trade routes and borders. Their soldiers trained the militaries of former enemies. Children of every species learned human history in school, not as entertainment, but as warning. They learned about the species that had evolved on a death world. The species that had fought wars against itself for thousands of years before turning that knowledge on the galaxy. On New Terra, the largest human colony, a memorial stood in the center of the capital city. It bore the names of every human who had died in the war, with Admiral Sarah Chen's name at the top. Below the names, carved in stone that could survive the death of stars, were her final words. We didn't want to be your monsters. You made us anyway. The galaxy was at peace. It would remain at peace. Because humanity was watching.